Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver show. We're happy you're here. On the show, we're certain that you'll relate to the caregiver stories and find comfort with your honorary sisters. Before we start, I want to remind you to go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, and sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to connect with you on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, and YouTube. We're sharing tons of useful information that you can use as well as chat with our followers. Now, let's jump right into today's confession. Well, good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it's early here in the United States.
But
You know where it's not early?
I can't
Where?
imagine. Maybe Italy.
Oh, you know what?
Oh.
And you know what's in Italy that I absolutely adore?
Pizza.
No, our guest, because pizza has carbs. Our guest today is so awesome. And Robert is with us from Italy, and he has carved out just a nugget of time to spend with these wonderful sisters.
Yes.
I'm
like, okay, I can't give a long introduction because we have so much to talk about with Robert.
Oh
We
my
could go
God.
on and on for
Oh
days.
my gosh, he is the brother we always wanted.
That's true. Except he
Yes.
has a better tan than the rest of us. So if you're not picking this up on YouTube, just jump
Oh.
on there because you got to see it.
Robert's got a fantastic tan and does not have
Dan.
red hair.
Yeah. Robert, you are officially our adopted brother. So let's
Yes.
get going, ladies. Let's
do
talk
it.
about Robert. So I will say that you are going to leave today as a listener. You are going to leave inspired. So get ready. Robert Pardi is the founder of Possibility in Action. So if that doesn't get you going, just think about it. Possibility in Action. He is an author, a captivating speaker, a wonderful guest, professor, and certified life coach. But his gift is touching lives of those who are ready to escape the ordinary and embark on a journey of limitless possibilities, which we all have. But it all started somewhere, guys. And he was in finance. His wife was an up-and-coming doctor. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And here's where it gets tricky. She never wanted to know anything about her disease, although she was a physician. Robert was the point of contact with the doctors. He moved his career to New York City, where she climbed the ranks at 2 major hospitals while undergoing treatments, including chemo, radiation, and 2 radical mastectomies. He says, I left work not so much to be her caregiver in the traditional sense, but unknowingly as her life coach. And I love this, helping her achieve her dreams. Robert, we love you right off the bat. So
Yes.
excited to talk to you. But I really feel like it's so much of a love story.
Oh, it is
Like,
a love story.
we are like Hallmark Channel fiends. We're like,
Oh
this
my
is a love
God.
story. So
It's almost better than the caregiver cruise that I want to do with Hallmark
yeah.
Channel.
So tell us, get us started about you guys, because it's a beautiful story.
Thank you so much for having me. And I will for sure be adopted, but we have to go back to that pizza has carbs thing. We'd have to work on that a little bit, Natalie, okay? Because, yeah.
Nobody wants to be a bloatation device.
They've already put a red flag at immigration if you ever come to this country. So there you go.
There we go.
So, but no, you are 100% right. In fact, when I authored the first book, which is about my wife, the publisher wanted to put like a picture of a couple running on the beach holding hands. It was very, Hallmark Channel love thing. And I'm like, oh, no, we have to go a different route. Because sure, it's a love story, right? I met Desiree. She was 17. I was 19. We met, let's just say she was a very determined young woman. So our first meeting was basically her pursuing me. And I was sort of like, no, I'm sorry. I want to live my life single. And this is just the way it's going to be. Long story behind that, my parents didn't have the best relationship. My father was an abusive alcoholic guy. So therefore, I didn't have a great role model family life. So I'm like, I just want to be alone,
Yeah.
And she wasn't going to stand for that. So
Yeah.
I respect that. I already like her.
Oh, you would have loved her. And a year later, I proposed. So there you go.
Rolled over.
No. I was gone. I was gone within the first 6 weeks. Yeah. What you were talking about Des is the way she handled her journey with breast cancer. is how she dealt with her whole life. Desiree never knew her GPA. She never knew her grades on the MCAT. That was my responsibility from the moment I met her. She was like, I don't want to ever judge myself. And this comes from some family background of her stuff. She's like, I just want to know I'm doing my best. And that just underlies the way we really did approach life. And she was a force to be reckoned with. She was very clear on who she was, what she wanted out of life, which made the caregiving journey and everything extremely powerful from the point of view of us as a couple, which I'd love to get into. And the fact that being a male caregiver is a different experience for sure, because society really doesn't know what to do with us.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's 100%.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the background of Des and I. We were married almost 20 years. In fact, here's the weirdest thing. She passes away and New York Hospital asks if I want to hold a memorial. And I'm like, well, I really didn't think about it, but yeah. And they're like, when? And I'm like, well, the sooner the later. And we can get into that whole ripping off the Band-Aid thing. Like I ripped the effing thing right off, like just get rid of that Band-Aid. They're like, well, the only date we have available in 2009 is October 15th. And I said, done deal. That's our 20th wedding anniversary. And she wanted a big party. So, you look at these things and it's absolutely crazy. So I did have the memorial then, but we were married almost 20 years. I knew her for 24. And oddly enough, I know this won't be posted today, but even though it was 14 years ago, so we're talking a long time, but the body remembers.
Yes, it does.
It remembers. And last night, really, I didn't sleep all that well because this was the day that she went into the hospital for the last time.
Wow.
And, I know we'll talk about the caregiving journey, but as we're here, let me just sort of explain to the viewers. So Des was somebody that always bounced back. I was told when she was diagnosed, and we can get into why I was told, but I was told that she has maximum of 3 years, no matter what we do. And it was 11. But this night, 14 years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and she wasn't in bed, which was somewhat unusual because, the chemo would sort of knock her out. And I found her curled up in the fetal position in the living room with a black garbage bag to her mouth full of vomit. And I look back on that now, and that was one of the few times that personally I would say maybe I faltered somewhat because I went directly into soldier mode, like not really acknowledging. I did acknowledge, but it wasn't that type of acknowledgement that, don't worry, we're going to take care of this. I was like, Des, listen, let's get to a doctor, right? It wasn't my normal scope of caregiving, let's say. And she never came back from that hospital visit.
That hurts me.
She was diagnosed right before she was 31, and she was diagnosed. You all were in Dubai.
Yes.
And so you've been married for, at that point, what, about 10 years? But you both have careers. You're both
highly successful people at that. Beyond the tan.
Yeah.
I wasn't this tan back then. I'm making up for lost time.
First of all, exactly what you said. It's so rare that if you look at our episodes, Robert, and you know this, it's primarily women.
Yep.
Yeah.
There are so few men that are comfortable getting out there and talking. And a lot of times it's hard as a spouse to talk about a wife that's either going through it or has passed. So that's really important. But you guys you're married, you're successful, and then you get this diagnosis and they tell you that it's 3 years. So kind of walk me through that. How
and they
did
tell
that occur?
you going back to where you said Des was like, I don't really want to know. So you can just be in charge of the knowledge base.
Well, actually, that was before she even raised her hand. So here's the funniest thing. So we were at, let's say, the peak of our everything, right? She was excelling. I had recently graduated Columbia. I was recruited by the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. They had told me I was the youngest recruit. We had everything we could have imagined, right? There was going to be money. There was going to be travel. There was going to be all kinds of things. So she decided to take a leave of absence between the MD and the PhD. Well, it's really weird. You do 2 years of MD, PhD in the middle, and then you finish the MD. So she was at the 6-year mark and she had the 2 years left and she wanted to take a sabbatical to live with me in the Middle East. Okay, this is a movie, right? Every 6 weeks we were meeting in a different country because we were big separated.
I'm telling you. I mean, that's harder to film for Hallmark, but keep going.
So she spent her birthday in Paris.
Oh, that's terrible.
I know, in front of the Notre Dame with a blanket and some cheese and wine and, sitting in the grass.
So it's the perfect life, you guys.
It is. It sounds like the perfect life.
And then it looked like the perfect life.
Exactly.
This interruption.
Well, she had actually found a lump in her breast a year before.
Yeah.
Now, I can't fault the medical community. She was 29, 30 at that point. She had a history of cystic breast. Her family had no family history of any type of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So the GYN basically said, you're too young. This is 1997, 1998. So of course, they didn't do mammograms. They didn't do those things back then for young women. It was very rare.
Right.
So while we were on the plane, she had a pain under her arm. And I said, well, you know what? You have to get a medical screening anyway in the UAE to live in the country. So let's just do the full checkup. And lo and behold, speeding this whole thing up, they decided that the lump was suspicious. And they decided that they were going to remove the lump. But they did tell her, if you wake up with a PCA, that means that's a patient-controlled pain pump.
Mm-hmm.
What it meant was that it was highly likely it was cancer.
Mm.
And so this was supposed to be a very short surgery, but like after 2 hours, like she's still in surgery. I'm like, what's going on? And the doctor comes out. Now, a male doctor, educated in the United States, but, of Muslim descent, let's say
Right.
Muslim religion, was not telling me because I was the man, but he was young himself. And here was this young, vibrant expat woman that was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And he was sort of taken aback. So he told me, and I said, can I actually give her the news? I think would be better for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I walk in as she was waking up and oh, wow, I could lose it right here. She looked at the pain pump and that was it. That was just it. She looked at me and she said, it's cancer. And I said, yes, what do you want to know? And she said, only the next steps. She said, Robert, I need you to be the buffer here because I know enough of medicine to be dangerous to myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Here is where my view of caregiving is a lot different because I believed this from the moment she was diagnosed, but even from the moment, like just knowing Desiree and some of the things we went through together, a caregiver's role is not to fix.
Mm.
And while I would have loved to have that magic wand or ask some divine being to come down. And I tell you, I walked on my knees in Lourdes. I took her through all the doors when there was the Jubilee. I'm like, there has to be some sort of magical presence somewhere, right? Let's go look for it.
Yeah.
But I realized that caregiving is nothing more than basically seeing the person during their journey. That is it. You have to acknowledge their humanity. You have to acknowledge everything that's going on. I remember once freaking out because she was eating sugar, because sugar could feed cancer. And she basically was like, Robert, I have to live my effing life. Please, I can't live this way. And that was one of those times I was like, hey, wait a minute. Yes, that's right. I'm here to help you live your life. I'm not here to help you focus on getting rid of the cancer. And so therefore, when the doctor asked me that, told me that, and she asked me that, I realized that was the gift I could give her. And here's the thing. It's not because I'm a guy, right? But because Desiree didn't want to know, and she was super intelligent, I was terrified to let people know what was happening. I couldn't tell my mom, leave it alone. My mom would have went into the Italian drama thing. Desiree would have picked up on that right away. But
right.
I couldn't tell everyone that asked me, it's okay. We're holding our own. Everything is okay. I couldn't share it with anyone. And that's when I came up with my definition of purpose. Because I spent a lot of time, I'm not religious, but I am very spiritual. And I spent a lot of time, even when I was in the Middle East, I read the Quran. I wanted to understand these things. And a lot of the Catholic upbringing and Christ with the cross came to my mind. And what I realized is, wait a minute, this weight is so important. Purpose is when passions come in alignment with values, but you want to give the results away. You're not looking for a gold star. Desiree was my passion. She was. That life, seeing her smile became so purposeful that the more I put on myself, the more I was like, wow, I can really make a difference here. A lot of men that I've worked with, they hold it inside because they don't want to show the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is they let it weigh them down because they have no expression of it. They don't know what to make of it. And I was able to think, okay, here's the thing about hope. So if we can redefine hope as well. My job was to take everything I was being asked to carry and make it into something wonderful. And what I realized is hoping for a miracle would have destroyed me. Hoping for the best day possible, which was under my control for as much as it could be, gave me all the power in the world. That weight didn't feel so heavy. And to get back to the vulnerability for a second, we all need an outlet. I am someone that I am very emotional. I cry all the time. I'm just somebody that cries. It is what it is, right? And
I love you more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you more for that. Thank you.
I did not cry in front of Des because that's not what she needed. Here's the thing, and I'll circle back to sort of the vulnerability for a second. When Des and I looked at what was in front of us, now these were not the words we used, but now, being the writer and everything nice like that, I've come up with all these nice things, right? So we decided that adversity, in this case, it was cancer, but adversity was not going to be the dominant color on the canvas of our life. We used that color as contrast for all the great things. And we learned to live in joy. And so I knew she didn't need to see that from me.
Yeah.
We had a great oncologist. I'd go to his office. We would chat. I would cry. Go to the Catholic Church. And I did speak to priests and I cried. I found outlets for what I needed. I was also super fit because I was in the gym all the time because there was just so much that I needed to get out. I was like super drugged out on cortisol because I was in fight or flight. Funny thing, just to bring that forward. So when I went back to work, I had to eat, let's say, humble pie in a way. I was always considered a really great leader. And when I went back, the staff that had always worked for me had trouble with me. And so I spoke to my business partner and he's like, listen, not every decision is life and death. You've been dealing with life and death for 11 years. You don't know how to make a standard decision. And I actually asked my team to teach me how to do that. I'm like, I know I am, quote, the boss here, but you can help me because I don't see it.
Yeah.
And so that's another point of vulnerability, right? So vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean you're going to sit there and cry in front of people. Vulnerability could be saying to friends, or not even, it could be picking up a book about somebody that you admire and saying, okay, I know I don't have the skill set here. I accept that vulnerability about myself, and I'm going to read about this person, or I'm going to ask this person, or I'm going to listen to this podcast. I'm not going to be afraid to confront the fact that I don't know, because a lot of times the men I've worked with, and whoa, you want to talk about like crazy dreams? I had continual dreams of being Superman, trying to fly and scraping my stomach on the asphalt.
Wow.
Continual. Other men that I've worked with have had similar type things because we believe we're supposed to somehow fix it all. That's why we don't look at that IKEA, instruction thing, and we just spill everything out on the and we're like, I think this bolt will go here. And then we're like, okay, I have 10 bolts that, I shouldn't have, but it's standing. So
for now,
I have to tell you, I have to stop for a second because I feel like I'm very emotional. Like I am the hardest person. Beep that out, Jay. Just beep that. Could you beep that? Thanks. I am such a hard person. The way you put about I came back and I was a different leader. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And you're right. I had been living in this fight or flight. And I didn't think about how much cortisol had been flowing through my veins. And I came back and I was so lost and I didn't feel like I had it. And you're right. Because I didn't feel like I didn't feel like a good leader. I mean, and ultimately I left my job 6 months later because I didn't fit anymore. I wasn't what they needed. And I don't think it was what I could do. And I don't think that realization there is so powerful to me. And I think so powerful to other people to say, you're going in this pace as a caregiver and you can't slow down. And it feels like this Mack truck and you're just waiting. And I don't know if you and Des felt this way, but Jason and I felt this way, like we were intentionally going towards a speeding train. You could see the light coming towards you, and we were standing on the tracks, and you're actually walking towards it, waiting to get hit. And so I really appreciate that. And the vulnerability piece of it, you're right. I don't have to cry to show that I'm vulnerable, because I am very type A. And I've always had people say, hey, you really have this hard candy. I always joke that I'm an M&M. I have a hard outer shell, and I'm really soft on the inside. And I don't like for people to see that I'm weak. I've been in a male dominated field for so long. But anyway, I think that's so important to understand who you are, to understand, that you don't have to be a certain way. You're allowed to be a different way too. And
I so appreciate you sharing that, because it is so important. Actually, even what you said, feeling like you weren't the right fit, or those types of emotions, it is because now Des and I, it was constructed in a certain way, right? That she was playing in the fields with the poppies and everything else, and I was standing on the train track. Now,
Des is like, watch out for that train. I think there's a train coming.
But of course, that's not true, right? Because towards the end, her body actually showed it, and she also there was a point in time that she actually asked to know some specifics, because it would help her with what she wanted to do.
Right.
But that whole idea of you go back into a world where you are, it is like your brain is vibrating so quickly, and nobody sees it. Nobody can understand it, even if you were to explain it. And so that's why, for me, like I was blessed that my business partner was such a great guy, but also it was the fact to basically say, hey, I'm broken here. Like I don't see it. That's the vulnerability, right? That's not crying, but that's just saying, hell, I want to be a better person here. I don't want this cortisol anymore. I don't want this perspective anymore. I don't want to be making decisions this way. With Des, I hoped it would be chronic, because she kept recurring. And I will never forget the doctor. He was the most awesome man ever. That's a whole nother story. He passed away, but he called me to discuss the results in person, and he had never done that. I remember walking those 8 or 9 blocks, I don't remember, March, freezing cold, in a t-shirt and shorts. I was so numb to go to his office. And as soon as I walked, I just knew, right? And that was the moment, and I think it's critical here as well, right? That was the moment I sat in his office, and I'm like, game over, right? And he's like, well, no one can ever say that, but I can't seem to control the cancer growth anymore. I can't slow it down. And so I said, well, what do we do? And he said, well, this is the time that I would recommend hospice, but that's not Desiree. And here's the thing that's so beautiful. And anyone listening to this, this is your journey with a disease, or if you're a caregiver, it's the person you're caring for, it's their journey. Find a doctor that respects the way you want that journey to unfold. And he said, that's not Desiree. And I'm like, yeah, that's not Desiree. So what do we do? And he's like, you have to become her hospice. And I said, teach me what I need to know.
Yeah.
And she actually survived another 18 months. So it again seemed like it was going to be one of those things where she was going to recover. But here's the thing as well, because I think this is extremely important. As a caregiver, when you know the end is coming, for me, it was still even a surprise, but I also knew the end was coming. Like you just feel it in so many different ways. I looked at, okay, well, our life is just unraveling here. We weren't able, it was about 2 years that we weren't physically intimate. And that's something I would love to chat about.
Yeah.
Yes, we reached a level of intimacy which was incredible in terms of transparency and talking, and definitely hand holding and rubbing the back of her neck because she didn't have hair for like forever, and stuff like that. But that aspect of our life was missing, and there were so many different aspects that I remember looking at her, and she was so sad, and she loved the beach, which is very funny because I guess she passed that over to me. I was more of a mountain guy, but now just put me in the sun and roast me and it's okay. So, and I looked at her and I'm like, I bet you would love to go to the beach. And she's like, yeah, but we can't travel. Because she was having like uncontrollable diarrhea and all kinds of other stuff. And it was so difficult. And I said, hey, I have an idea. What if we take a taxi to Coney Island? We could grab a Nathan's hot dog and you put your feet in the water. That was the best of the solutions. And here's the thing, everybody. You have to walk away from the perfection and best. Best is not 100%. Best is giving 100% of what you have. If you have not slept in 3 nights, I'm telling you, you're going to only have about 20% the next day.
Yeah.
Make that 20% the best it can be for you and for that person. So we took a taxi to the beach. We got the hot dog. She put her feet in the water. She smiled like so big. She turned around and she said, Robert, I'm in a lot of pain. We need to go home. It was not even 5 minutes. 100 and something bucks at that time. I was in so much debt by the end of the whole journey. But I'm like, put it on the credit card, whatever the case is, let's make this happen.
Yeah.
She came home, she went to sleep. But I know that moment where she smiled was more medicine than anything else that could have ever happened. And that was the best that things could have been. And to not and instead of focusing on, oh my God, we can't go to the beach, or we can't do this, or we can't do that, we can't eat this food. Oh, no, we can do this. And let's just revel in that, because soon it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
Hey, ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the U.S. and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing.
Robert, we did in our very first call, and it's something that is a hard topic, but we talked about intimacy. And I know I've had ailments before. I had endometrial cancer and am totally have a clean bill of health now. But things like that are hard in marriages. And I know Natalie's experienced that with her husband. And we talk about different levels that takes your relationship to. But as the female, it's kind of disheartening it's hard for me. It was very hard for me. But tell me, because I think men need to hear the male voice. The female voice is always 100%. Like, well, this is what it did to me. But tell me about your relationship with your wife during that time, because I know there's some humor in it as well. You guys, You guys made it, and so tell me about that.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because there were all kinds of things. Now here, I have an acronym for loss. And even though I was not the one with the illness, right, I was in a loss situation.
Yeah.
So loss is the lack of self, meaning that it attacks your identity, and security, because the world does not feel safe. So first, as a guy, right, like, if you're hanging out with your friends and they're talking about like this or that, because there's always those banters about sex or something like that, and you're not sexually active with your partner, like you feel, oh my God, like, am I really being a man? Right? Now, here's the toughest thing. So guys that listening here, the strongest you can ever be is to actually have that conversation. with your partner.
Mm.
Don't ignore it. That is not stepping up to the plate. So Des and I talked about things. We now, if we go back for a second, like when she was first diagnosed, they didn't do a double mastectomy right away. And this was the Middle East, and there were all kinds of complications, right? So she had one breast, and she was double D. You know, she was very proud of her body, and she was lopsided, right? And she was very uncomfortable. We learned, and I am 100% sure that it's the same for everyone. If you bring in humor, you will open up intimacy and you'll reduce the situation. So first of all, the one breast that remained was Boubette. We called it Boubette. Okay. And, you know, I'd ask, does Boubette want to come out to play? You know, stuff like that. we just, because there was nothing other to do in a way. Like, this is what life gave us. And she loved me. I loved her. We were going to work this through. I can just imagine what it's like for a guy that has, you know, erectile dysfunction. Yeah. You know, I can't even comprehend, like, you know, here I see Des being lopsided and just the devastation. But then she decided to go through a stem cell transplant, and that put her into menopause. And she had a very strange reaction in terms of the endometrial growth, where it was very hard to actually penetrate. And then she had expanders at one point in time, which we would joke about and stuff like that. And because, you know, they were all different sizes. And I'm like, oh, you know, if I was only that big, something like that, you know. Yeah. So I'm like, we're not
warning on this podcast. Like, guys, if you want to, this is like the best, you know, because it's absolute truth, though.
But it is. Like, and why not in a way joke? Because we're confronting death right now. Of course, we're talking about my caregiver journey, which there are caregivers that someone recovers, you know, they have an illness, they've broken a leg and stuff like that. So that's one thing. Mine was that high-speed train. I knew it had to hit. There was no way that it wasn't going to. Yeah. So in that situation, what do? You know, let me step, and I joke about this, but let me step up to the plate. As a guy, I know a lot about armor. I think we all do. But guys, we tend to be able to really pack on that armor. You know what? The more we put on, the more we equate our strength with the thickness of the armor and not us. So you know what? Strip down, jump in naked, and wrestle with the demons, right? And so that's what I did with Des. We did. The physical relationship faded away, and we had conversations where she would cry and say, Robert, you know, look, I don't want to be married to a parent. And I'm like, I understand that. And hopefully this is temporary. But I can tell you 100% that I can't wait for the day that I could possibly, you know, do those other things with you. And it didn't happen, but there was a lot, again, when it comes to the intimacy, because yes, we did speak a lot. We touched a lot more. We joked a lot more. We allowed ourselves we had a lot more romance as well. You know, and just, you know, if I can't tell you how many times, like, we would just sit and hold hands watching TV, and she watched every episode of Friends like 16,000 times so I could repeat them all. And she laughed at every single one. But I sat there to hold her hand, and I'm like, okay, you know, this is fine. Yeah. And I look like Ross right now with my tan, but I can tell you on both sides, I am tan. So don't worry about it. I don't have the white line. I haven't flipping. In Europe. Yeah. So, you know, it's that type of thing where at the end of the day, I think what my caregiver journey taught me, and to a certain extent, I had to live Des's disease, right? Because she didn't want to know, but I had to know. And then I had to make decisions accordingly. And over time, we would only entertain with her friends instead of mine. One, because I couldn't share things with them. And second, I wanted to make sure she saw her friends up until she couldn't. Like, I started thinking about all these types of things. But what it taught me, and if you want to look for like reframing and gifts, and honestly, reframing sounds like a nice tool. If you just reframe and you sit there at reframing, you're just going to fight against it. There's going to be that voice in the back of your head saying, what are you saying? You're just trying to convince us, blah, blah, blah. But if you find evidence of the reframe, and here the biggest lesson was it taught us to strip away the unnecessary. Even that whole idea of ego and my masculinity and how often we would have intercourse and everything else. I mean, that's really unnecessary. That's just chatter that has no bearing on anything. And so we had to look at those things. And I think it's a beautiful way to live life. If you start thinking about really focus on impermanence, because that's what I had to do, right? The train was coming. I knew it was coming. And you focus on that impermanence, you'll start to realize, really, why am I worrying about this? Or this is really unnecessary. Or why do we have like 16 different, sets of plates? And, you just start thinking like, what is all of this, right? Like, what is the crux of what we're supposed to live? And what Desiree and I were supposed to live was a connection. And my role in that connection was to support her to reach her dreams. I'm sure she could have done it without me, to tell you the truth, 100%. But she became the founding director of palliative care while having metastatic breast cancer. And I know I played a part in that.
I think and we talk about you assisting her. That was kind of your goal as a life coach, to help her get her dreams. Everybody, I think it's so important during that period of her disease.
Oh, she kept being a rock star.
She became the director, and you'll go into that. But what she did during those years, working in palliative care, and tell me about that, because during all this illness, you guys were still chasing the career. She's still working.
I actually left my career towards the end because I wanted to make sure that I was there for her, right. Whether it was to bring her sandwiches or her to call up. We lived near the hospital, right? Because she worked there, and she'd be like, "Oh, Robert, I'm having like really bad pain. Can you bring me a pillow?" I was there, and then I would bring donuts for the staff or whatever. I was doing all what I needed to do to help her along the way. But Desiree was so determined that not only were we going to live around the disease, but she was going to make something out of her journey. Now, here's something else. Just in general, people listening to this, caregiving is the boot camp of life. Okay? So what we're talking about here is not caregiver specific. What we're talking about here is to live a good life. So, part of this whole thing of her wanting to use her disease and her journey to do something important, it's the fact of, I'm going to use life instead of being used by life. And she had a clear vision of what that was going to look like. And I got to participate in that. Now, when she did her palliative care training at Sloan Kettering, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, and she was the chief resident as well while she was there, even though she had breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer. And at that point in time, she had breast cancer in her liver, one lung, her peritoneum, and her spine.
Robert, did you all share this information with a lot of people?
First of all, New York Hospital is where she had all her treatment.
Okay.
Yeah. But she goes into the interview at New York Hospital, and she explains how her perspective can really make a difference in people's lives. And they said, okay, let us think about it. And she said to the panel, because they were interviewing other people.
Yeah.
And she said to the panel, I don't have time for you to think about it. I need a decision now.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, that's taking away the unnecessary, right? That's when you just get down to it and you're like, do we really need to play this game? I'm here. This is what I'm willing to do. It's a yes or no answer. And it was a yes.
Put up or shut up.
Yeah. And she
so respect that.
She completely changed the dynamic. She was the founding director, so palliative care really didn't really exist. Yeah. But because she was a patient at the hospital, and a doctor at the hospital and a teaching professor at the hospital, she made ripples. She really made ripples. So her whole focus, and what also led me to become a life coach afterwards, was something we both said to each other. Our stories, all our lived experience, have absolutely no value if we haven't shared them.
You are speaking my love language.
Right?
That's exactly, think about what we're doing here.
Yeah.
If we don't tell someone, you just sit there and you're like, is it just me? Or why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
Or, and the insights gained is really the gift that you give to someone else. And if they take it and they absorb it, or they figure out their own stuff, or whatever it is, I think we go through this stuff because we were meant to learn something from it. And what you take from it, what you do with it, is totally up to you. Yeah. But don't miss the message.
Love that. Don't miss the message. But then again, if you take that message, you open it, you read it, you put it in the envelope, and you put it in a drawer, does anyone know that message was received?
That's right.
The tree in the forest thing, does it make a sound? Well, if you're not sharing the message you got, did that message really exist? Yeah. That's part of, again, these are life lessons, not necessarily caregiving lessons, but we are meant to express ourselves here. We're supposed to, we want to know ourselves, of course, but then express ourselves. The inward journey is meant to be expressed outward. But if we're not expressing who we are, have we existed? Have we really been seen? That's part of that thing about the armor as well. Hell, it came to the point in time I was going to have to take off the armor. This is who I am. This is what I got. I'm going in. And that sounded very much from the male side of the equation, but it is the journey we decide it's going to be. The things we encounter, we can't control. The whole Stoic thing, right? But the way we respond, the way we craft our lives, it's that. There's a beautiful quote by Richard Bach in his book One. Now I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it 100% anymore, but it says we're each born with a block of marble and the tools to craft it into a sculpture. We can leave it untouched. That's inaction. That's complacency, right? That's just, we just got that block of marble. We're just going to sort of live this life. That's it. We can pound it into gravel. That's anger. There was a lot of anger when this first came up, right? And I was like, how could this happen? And that wasn't going to serve anything. Anger is a great force to move forward, but it's not sustainable and it's destructive after a while because it can very much lead to worse types of behaviors. And so the last part of that quote is, or you can shape it into glory. And that's really, at the end of the day, I think, whatever situation we find ourselves in, because we will all find ourselves in a type of boot camp at some point in time. And do we want to shape that into whatever type of glory it can be? I would have probably never become a life coach if I didn't take that perspective during caregiving and realize that I became her life coach to help her achieve her dreams, but also to confront so many of the fears and the limiting beliefs of what life is and what life we're told should be and everything else. And look, I walked away from an investment banking career. I have a Columbia MBA. I was teaching English for $8 an hour in Italy when I reimagined my life, because that was the investment I needed to make to live the next story. And this is the thing. The question I asked myself, and here's the question you can ask as a caregiver as well, is what is the best story that can come from this? I asked myself that question when Desiree passed away. It wasn't the what if I fail doing that story, going after that story, but what if I succeed? What if I actually make that story happen? And that's again, if we just take into account your caregiving journey, it is tiring. It is heavy. It is draining. We have to be aware of those things. But we don't have to let it steamroll us every single day. That's approaching it as obligation. Step back and look at what's the opportunity here. And now, this is not easy, right? There were a lot of times that I just wanted to, go and, I don't know, punch something, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But I also had to say, okay, if I am approaching all of this as an obligation, I'm going to start to hate everything that's happening, which means then I am projecting that onto the person I love.
Mm.
Love and hate don't exist, right? Desiree was not going to be, and there is a part in the book, where I talk about when her cancer came back, I didn't know how to deal with that. And the events that happened, literally, I actually did take a knife and want to stick it in my stomach because I just was overwhelmed. And I saw the way she looked at me and I said, oh no, I can't make her think that this is a burden for me, because she's not a burden. She's the love of my life. She's a gift that I was given. And that was it. That was the moment that I was like, this is ridiculous. I made this all about me. And it's about her, it's about us. But I am given this opportunity to really step up and be that knight in shining armor. Even though I hate that term and the white horse and everything else, but I could have either been and this is the same thing after she passed away, I could have sat in the bitterness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not respecting the love that I know exists and existed. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed as a caregiver, at least for me, one of the things I looked at is I said, wow, but these things I'm doing as a caregiver give me another day with this person.
Mm. Oh, I'm going to tell you, it's just, Robert has taken us to church today. That's
amen.
Because I'm like, oh, we went to church today.
Did you notice that we didn't have a whole lot? We didn't talk a lot, which we were not the interrupting cows, because we were like, everything you said hits the nail. I just am so like, I'm
grateful,
grateful, yeah. Touched. And I'm so blessed and thankful, because I feel like there's so many people that will take away, no matter where you are in your caregiving experience, even if you're working your way through the after.
Yeah.
There's so many things about purpose and about intentionality and about vulnerability, Robert, that, you're past that time and you've got the ability to look back. But if we could pick up on that now in the midst of it and go, wait a minute, I'm going to take that hope portion, and I'm going to do my best today and not hope for the cure. For me, that's what I take is, Jay, you stop hoping for the cure and hope for this great day. And so today, Mom got to go get Sonic ice cream, and that was the best day.
Oh my God. I'm going to tell you, so we always, Robert, I forgot to tell you at the beginning. We always love to do sister questions. And
okay.
And I know we've got limited time because we could be on a whole nother episode and just keep going to church. But we do sister questions. And so Emily, because Emily's always quiet, I want to have Emily ask the sister question.
Cool.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, it's hard to get a word in with those two. But Robert, you are beautiful. I mean, you've touched my heart today. When I hear that word boot camp, I remember telling JJ, I know this is going to be 3 months of boot camp with Mom. How did you get through it?
Wow. So honestly, I'll just go back again to the idea of purpose. Now, I did a lot of, just to go way, way back, right? So the whole thing with my dad, right? growing up with an abusive alcoholic father, you learn about uncertainty. You go through a boot camp. You learn about resilience. You learn about grit. There's a lot of things you learn, right? So I had those tools in my tool belt. So one of the things, I would journal a lot. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever read the book Conversations with God, and I'm sort of plugging someone else's book, but it's an old book. It was written by Neil Donald Walsh, but basically he would journal and he would get a response from what he believed was God. And, we have that inner wisdom inside of ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And so how I got through it, especially because I wasn't necessarily able to talk to people, I would journal. I would ask myself the questions. Why am I carrying this weight? Why am I letting this bother me? What could I do differently? How can I show up as my best? What would Desiree need from me that she might not be telling me? How can I ask her without giving her fear? And so every day I was writing in this journal, because I am that type of person that I'm very inside myself, that's what I was doing to, let's say, get myself through the boot camp. Then, of course, 11 years, it becomes natural. And she was very self-sufficient, right? Hey, we traveled around the world. She volunteered in India, even though she was going through chemotherapy, which I was like, her oncologist. I'm like, India, really? It's okay? He's like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm like, it's India. You can't drink the water. Don't worry about it. Okay. Surrender. Okay, surrender. Everyone told me it's going to be okay. I will surrender. But no, she was very self-sufficient. So that made our journey somewhat different. But I had to still deal with the more emotional aspects instead of the physical aspects. Like the results would come and we would have to change chemo. And she'd be like, it's bad. And I'm like, no, actually, and I knew enough about medicine at that point in time because I helped her study, and, the doctor helped me a lot. And I actually volunteered as a chemo person as well. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so I would sit there and I'd say, no, but you know what? He wants to switch up the chemo to shock the system. And I could explain why medically that would fit for her as a lay person. And she'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And we would just go on our way. So, I had to balance that aspect. So it might not have been the physical stuff, but there was still that weight. And the journaling helped me 100%. And the exercise. Yeah.
I totally agree. Journaling is what got me through it. Because I read my journal entries this summer. I went back for the first time. I never had read my journal entries after I wrote them. And then I realized how much grammar issue I had. And so I was grateful for everyone who did not think I was an idiot. I'm like, oh shit, there's a typo. And so, but journaling is wonderful. And yeah, I totally agree. Honestly, I hate to stop us. I have to stop us now. Like, we're going to come back. And we're going to have Robert come back because I don't even care what we talk about, to be honest with you. Like, everybody will be like, I just want to talk to Robert. I just love you. We love you. You're the brother we always wanted.
Are we really out of time?
We are. I actually think we're over time. And so,
okay, Robert's coming back. That's it.
Robert's coming back. And so
I would love to.
Robert, we love you.
We would be honored to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for listening in. I know that you have been blessed as much as we have. And so until the next time when we confess again, thank you so much. And thank you, Robert. We love you.
Ciao.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Thank you so much for listening in. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions Show. Don't forget, visit our website to sign up for our newsletter and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter. You'll also find the video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. We are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk to a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this show are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This show is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver show.